The crowd was loud before the sound ever landed. 1,000 boots on concrete, rows perfectly aligned, the air thick with heat, sweat, and expectation. The ceremony was meant to be routine. A visiting senior officer, a formal address, a reminder of discipline and order. Rachel Morgan stood at the edge of the formation, spine straight, eyes forward, jaw set. She wore the same uniform as everyone else, blended in by design. No medals on display, no special treatment, just another officer among many. That was how she preferred it. The man at the podium spoke with confidence sharpened by decades of authority. His voice carried easily, practiced, commanding. He talked about standards, about respect, about knowing your place in the chain. Rachel listened without reacting. She'd heard it all before. Different rooms, different faces, same themes. Then his tone shifted. Some people, the Admiral said, pacing slowly now, mistake opportunity for entitlement. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the ranks. They think perseverance excuses insubordination, he continued. That confidence, without permission, equals strength. Rachel felt the shift before the words landed. She knew that cadence, the narrowing focus. She didn't move. The Admiral stopped walking. His gaze locked onto her. "You," he said, pointing. Every head turned. Rachel stepped out cleanly, crisp, controlled. "Sir," the Admiral looked her up and down, openly dismissive. "You've been causing friction." "With respect, sir," Rachel replied calmly. "I've followed every directive given." "Don't lecture me," he snapped. The temperature dropped. "I've read your file," he continued. "You push boundaries. Question methods. You forget who you're standing in front of." Rachel didn't blink. "I know exactly who I'm standing in front of." That was the moment. Gasps spread before anyone could stop them. The Admiral crossed the distance in 3 sharp steps, an O warning, an O command. His hand came up fast and struck her across the face. The sound cracked across the open space like a gunshot. Rachel staggered half a step, boots scraping, head snapping to the side. The world rang for a second. Blood filled her mouth where her teeth cut her lip point. 1,000 soldiers stood frozen. And oh, one breathed. Rachel straightened slowly, wiping blood from her lip with the back of her hand. Her cheek burned. Her ears rang. But her eyes were clear, dead calm. "Stand down." The Admiral barked at the formation, as if daring anyone to move. Rachel faced him again. "You assaulted me," she said evenly. "You embarrassed yourself," he replied. "In front of everyone." She nodded once, as if accepting a fact. "Then I'll accept the consequences." Somewhere in the formation, a voice whispered, "Is this really happening?" The Admiral leaned in close. "You don't belong here." Rachel's voice dropped, quiet enough that only he could hear. "You don't know where I belong." He laughed. "You think this ends well for you?" Rachel met his eyes. "I think this ends truthfully." Security began to move at the edges. Too slow. Unsure, the Admiral turned back toward the podium. "Remove her," he ordered. Rachel didn't resist as 2 guards approached. She didn't fight. She didn't shout. She smiled. Not because she enjoyed what had happened, but because she knew what came next. Hours later, Rachel sat alone in a small concrete room, ice pressed to her cheek. The redness had already bloomed dark. Her hands rested loosely in her lap that a younger officer stood awkwardly by the door. "You shouldn't have spoken back," he said quietly. "He's not someone you challenge." Rachel looked up. "Then he shouldn't have challenged me." The officer hesitated. "They're deciding what to do with you." Rachel nodded. "They always do." When the door finally opened, it wasn't security who stepped in. It was a woman in plain clothes, posture unmistakable, eyes sharp. "Rachel Morgan?" she asked. "Yes." "Come with me." They walked through hallways Rachel hadn't seen before. Quiet, restricted, the kind of places that didn't exist unless you already belonged there. The woman stopped at an unmarked door. "You kept your temper." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Barely." "That matters," the woman said, "because what happens next requires restraint." Inside, 3 people waited. No uniforms, no rank on display. Just a tension point. One of them spoke. "You were struck today." "Yes." "In front of witnesses." "Yes." "You didn't retaliate." "No, why?" Rachel didn't answer right away. Then, because timing matters. A long pause. The woman smiled faintly. It does. Weeks later, Rachel stood on a beach before dawn, cold water biting at her boots. The world felt stripped down to breath and horizon that a voice beside her said, "Last chance to walk away." Rachel stared forward. I walked toward this. The training that followed was relentless, brutal, honest. No applause, no protection, just limits tested and broken, then tested again. She failed. She learned. She endured. Not to prove anyone wrong. Prove herself right. Years passed. The memory of the slap never faded. It sharpened. And on a clear morning, far from the crowd that once watched her bleed in silence, Rachel stood again in formation. Different place, different role, different outcome. If you want to hear how that day came full circle and how truth has a way of confronting arrogance when no one expects it, make sure you subscribe to Generals and Truth Stories, because what happened next stunned everyone. The sand was cold, damp against her palms as the sun edged up over the horizon. Rachel's breath came slow and measured, fogging the air in front of her. Around her, others shifted their weight, some already exhausted before the day had truly begun. She didn't look at them. She looked straight ahead. The voice that had asked if she wanted to walk away said nothing now. There were no speeches here, no crowds, no applause, just expectation and consequence. The training stripped everything down. Names didn't matter. Background didn't matter. Pride didn't survive long enough to be missed. Days blurred into nights. Muscle screamed. Doubt crept in during the quiet moments, the ones where no one was watching. Rachel welcomed those moments. Pain was honest. It didn't lie to her. It didn't pretend. There were days she thought about the sound of that slap, not with anger anymore, but with clarity. The shock of it, the stillness afterward, the thousand faces that had looked away because they didn't know what else to do. She promised herself something then, somewhere between exhaustion and resolve. If she ever stood across from power again, it would be on equal ground. Months passed. Then more. Rachel earned nothing easily. Every inch forward was paid for. There were no shortcuts, no favors. If anything, she was pushed harder than most, watched more closely. She never complained. She learned when to speak and when silence carried more weight. She learned how to move without wasted effort, how to think when the body begged to stop, how to stay calm when everything inside wanted to explode. And slowly, quietly, she changed, not into something louder, into something sharper. Years later, the room felt familiar. Concrete floor, high ceiling, lines of people standing in formation. The smell of polish and sweat and anticipation. Rachel stood among them again, posture flawless, eyes forward. Her uniform was different now, simpler. No decorations calling attention. Authority carried itself in how she stood, not what she wore. The crowd was smaller this time, but the tension felt heavier. At the front of the room stood a man she recognized instantly. Older now. Same posture. Same confidence that came from never being challenged publicly. He spoke again about discipline, about respect, about knowing your place. Rachel listened that he hadn't changed. When he finished, there was a pause. Paper shifted. Chairs scraped faintly. Then someone spoke from the side. "We'll begin the demonstration." The man at the front frowned slightly. "Demonstration?" "Yes," the voice replied calmly. "As scheduled." Rachel stepped forward. The murmur that rippled through the room was unmistakable. Confusion, curiosity, recognition for a few. The man's eyes narrowed as he saw her face. You could see the moment it clicked. His jaw tightened. Rachel stopped a few steps away, standing at ease. "You," he said, disbelief creeping into his voice. "This is highly inappropriate." Respectfully, Rachel replied evenly, "I'm here by invitation." "From whom?" he demanded. Rachel didn't answer. Another figure stepped into view, holding a folder. "From us." The man stiffened. "This isn't necessary." "It is," the other voice said. "You once said she didn't belong. Today, you'll see exactly where she does." The room went silent. Rachel was handed protective gear. Minimal, practical. "So this is some kind of spectacle?" The man scoffed. "An attempt to embarrass me?" Rachel met his gaze for the first time. No, then she added quietly, "It's a lesson." He laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "You think you're here to teach me?" "I don't think," she said. "I know." The demonstration began, controlled, structured, clear rules, no chaos, no anger. Rachel moved with precision that didn't look fast until it was too late to react. Every step had purpose. Every motion flowed into the next. The man tried to assert himself physically, to dominate through force the way he always had. It didn't work. Rachel redirected him, unbalanced him, used his own momentum against him. She didn't strike wildly. She didn't show off. She ended it in seconds. He hit the mat hard, stunned, breath knocked from his lungs, staring up at the ceiling in disbelief. The room didn't cheer. It went silent. Rachel stepped back immediately, hands open, posture neutral. "Are you injured?" she asked. Professionally, he struggled to sit up, pride more wounded than his body. "No," he snapped. "Good," she said. "Then we're done." She turned to leave. "Wait," he said, his voice strained. Rachel paused but didn't turn around. "You think this proves something?" he asked. She finally faced him again. "Yes," she said calmly. "It proves that authority without accountability eventually collapses." The words landed heavier than any blow. Rachel walked out without another glance. Outside, the air felt lighter, cleaner. She exhaled, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. Later that evening, she sat alone, cleaning sand from her boots, watching the sun dip below the horizon. There was no celebration, no announcement. She didn't need one. She had never wanted revenge. She had wanted balance. That if this story stayed with you, if you believe real strength is quiet, earned, and unshakable, make sure you subscribe to Generals and Truth Stories, because some lessons don't come from shouting the loudest. They come from standing firm until the truth stands with you.